In the show, Tyrion is represented by Bronn in his first trial by combat. His opponent, Servardis, is a heavily armored knight. The fight takes place in the throne room, with the sky door open in the middle. Bronn uses some sick parkour skills to evade the knight's attacks, but at one point is almost pushed through the hole in the floor to a lethal fall. However, he regains his footing, throwing a candelabra, and even just a whole guy at his opponent. Come on, man, what are you doing? Eventually, Bronn's quick reflexes win, and he dispatches the knight. In the book, instead of the throne room, the duel takes place in the courtyard, and the sky door is replaced with a statue of a weeping woman. This changes the dynamic of the fight heavily as Bronn maneuvers around it using the statue as a shield of his own, even dodging a charge that sent his opponent slamming into the statue so hard it rocked on its stand. Servardis splits Bronn's lip open with a bash from his shield, but Bronn grasped the statue to stay afoot. The blade of Servardis again struck the statue, but this time snapped in two. Bronn then shoved the massive statue over, toppling it onto the knight and pinning him beneath it. He used this opportunity to win the fight. In the show, when the bodies of Benjen's men are found, Jon, Sam, and Jeor examine them after they are brought inside the wall. Sam confidently proclaims there is no smell, and corpses out this long would assuredly rot, to which Jeor agrees. Jon then says the corpses should be burned, to which Jeor says he wishes to have Maester Aemon examine them first. In the books, Jon, Sam, and Jeor are part of the party which finds the bodies outside of the wall. Sam can hardly bring himself to look at the corpses, hiding behind the horses in fright. A ranger suggests wildlings ended the men, but Sam, with great effort, and through much ridicule, stammers out a comment on the lack of decomposition on the bodies. Initially, the rangers don't believe him, but when he also mentions no wild animals have touched the corpses, they realize he has the truth of it. It's also made of great note none of their own animals will approach the bodies, with one of the hounds even attacking its handler to escape, the only exception of this being Ghost. A few rangers behind Jon suggest burning the corpses, and Jeor has them taken into the wall to be examined by Maester Aemon. Tyrion's character is much different in the books. In the show, his actor, Peter Dinklage, is overall a fairly handsome and attractive person, even after receiving his facial scar. In the books, Tyrion has a squished, contorted, pig-like face with a snub nose. His hair is thin and wispy, so blonde it almost looks white. In addition to this, he has heterochromia, a condition where his eyes are different colors, overall giving him a twisted and asymmetrical face. His legs, while not only being shorter than average, are contorted and disformed, making walking and riding extremely difficult. While these may seem like merely cosmetic differences, they play a key role to Tyrion's character specifically. Much of the discrimination Tyrion faces is inflamed by his ghastly appearance. The moniker of imp makes much more sense when even a kind person may struggle to look at him. His gaze making people uncomfortable is actually something he is aware of and takes advantage of, but makes significantly less sense in the show, and his overall appearance being much worse explains why his treatment in the show was so poor. In the show, when Jaime confronts Ned, Ned is accompanied by Jory and two Stark men on foot. Jaime taunts Ned, threatening his life. When Ned replies that if any harm come to him, Jaime's brother Tyrion would be killed, Jaime acknowledges this and orders his men to capture him alive, slaying Jory himself, driving a knife through his eye. Then a duel between Jaime and Ned commences until a Lannister man stabs Ned in the leg. In the books, the scene plays out at night in the pouring rain. Ned is accompanied by Littlefinger, Jory, Will, and all of them are mounted. The Lannisters arrive, outnumbering them almost 7-1. When Ned threatens Tyrion's life, Jaime doesn't order him captured, but that Ned must remain unharmed, and his men are to be executed. Jaime then sheaths his sword and leaves, not partaking in the fight, despite being the only mounted Lannister. While a gruesome battle ensues with gory details of the Lannisters struggling against mounted opponents, eventually their superior numbers prevail, and Will and Jory are killed. Ned is untouched by the Lannister troops. However, during the fray, his horse slips from underneath him, and he falls, breaking a leg. In the show, after Jon is sent to his cell for attacking Alliser Thorne, Ghost shows distress to something outside the room. Jon is attacked by the wight who chokes him with both hands after it locked Ghost out of the room. Jon stabs his body with a knife, chops off its hand, and runs him through with his sword. When Jeor appears in full armor, the wight rises, to which Jon grabs Jeor's lamp, launching it at the wight, finishing it. The book version is far more gruesome. Upon exiting his chambers, Jon sees the guard stationed to him has had his head completely twisted around. Being disarmed for attacking Thorne, Jon arms himself with the dead man's sword. When confronting the wight, Ghost tackles it, both combatants eerily silent as Jeor's raven screeches. Blind in the dark, Jon rips down the curtains, flooding the room with moonlight. Seeing the wight getting the better of Ghost, he hacks its arm off and slashes its face deep into the bone. The disembodied hand runs up Jon's leg, clawing at him. The wight tackles Jon as it shoves its remaining hand down Jon's mouth to suffocate him. Ghost rescues him as Jeor stumbles in naked. Jon flings his lamp at the curtains and wraps the wight in them, him. In the show, we learn about Tyrion's backstory through a drinking game that he plays with Bronn and Shay. Shay asks who Tyrion was in love with. He protests to answering the question, and Bronn reveals he learned Tyrion was married while playing dice with Lannister soldiers. With some convincing, eventually Tyrion reveals the tragic story of his first marriage, a ruse put on by his brother and father to lose his virginity. Shay goes to comfort Tyrion, and Bronn leaves. In the books, while the story of his marriage is the same, we learn about it under far different circumstances. Tyrion and Bronn are leaving the Vale on the high road after Tyrion's first trial. They make camp knowing full well the warriors of the hill tribes would soon be upon them. Tyrion lays down gazing at the stars in the clear, cold sky, and is reminded of the tale which he offers unsolicited. When he's finished, his only comfort is Bronn stating, "I would have killed the man who did that to me," as he sharpens his sword. Tyrion replies, "You may get that chance. Remember what I told you, a Lannister always pays his debts." In the show, when Cersei is confronting Sansa after Sansa's father, Ned Stark, was captured, Cersei meets her with the small council by her side. She sympathizes with Sansa, saying she knows she didn't do anything wrong herself, but then asks how she could let the daughter of a traitor marry her son, using Sansa's love for Joffrey as leverage to get Sansa to write a letter to her family in the north. In the books, the scene is set up the same, but Sansa reveals it was her who went directly to Cersei and informed her that her father intended to bring her and Arya back to the north. When pressed about her traitor's blood, she says it's Arya who has the traitor's blood, not her. This change is assuredly intentional, as almost every other aspect of this scene is word for word taken from the novel, but this has a major implication as to Sansa essentially being responsible for her and Arya not escaping King's Landing in time, which has me curious as to why this was changed in the show. What do you think? In the show, we learn of the Hound's backstory through dialogue that Littlefinger has with Sansa at Robert's tourney. It's a second-hand account and it's easy to miss if you're not paying attention, and not exactly an impactful scene by any stretch. In the books, the scene has so much more weight to it, and is one of the most powerful moments in literature. Sandor is escorting Sansa home after a ball. Sandor had too much to drink and shares the tale of how his brother held his head in a fire, seared his flesh, and how men don't know what hell is like until they've experienced the horror of fire. It's a visceral scene where he's described as leaning in close, and although Sansa can't see him in the dark, she can smell the stench of wine on his breath. But perhaps the most powerful moment is when Sandor comes to his senses, realizing that he's overshared, and tells Sansa that if she shares what she learned tonight with anyone else, he wouldn't hesitate to kill her. Anyone who has finished the Game of Thrones TV series is assuredly aware that the later seasons really diverge from the source material. Even if you haven't read the books, the middle seasons started to branch from the books, even omitting entire characters, with the last few seasons being made before the novels were even released. However, what people don't talk about is how faithful the series was to the novels originally. I've been rewatching the first season, and it's nuts how accurate some of these scenes are. I'm talking shot for shot, line for line. When Ned figures out Joffrey isn't Robert's son, speaking with his daughters, the scene is almost word for word taken from the books, and even scenes where there isn't dialogue, like when he first sits under the weirwood tree in the Godswood, visually are recreated perfectly. Obviously, it's impossible to be 100%, and there are changes, many of which we've discussed on this channel, but the first season especially did an impeccable job maintaining the intention and spirit behind each of the scenes from the novel. Really makes you wonder how they got so off course in the later parts of the story. If you're interested in a more in-depth analysis as to how Tywin's introduction was changed in the show versus the books, be sure to click the link posted on screen.